Good morning, everyone. This is Sharon Francis. I'm business advisor with Minority Business Assistance Center, and we want to welcome you to our webinar today. Franchising, is it right for me? So, just glad for all of you who have joined us today. We have with us an expert in this area. His name is Ted Fireman of FranNet, specializes in helping businesses and business owners who are considering launching into franchising. Certainly, he is an industry expert, and so we are pleased to have him with us today. Also on the call, we have Rosita Torres, who is a certification specialist with the Minority Business Assistance Center, and she will be managing our chat. So as Ted is giving his presentation, if you have any questions, you can put those in the chat, and then Rosita will be able to share that with Ted, and he can respond. So again, just welcome. So glad that you all are here with us today. This session will be recorded so that you can will be able to receive a copy of it later on today, hopefully, if not first thing tomorrow, so that you can refer to the information that is being shared. So you don't necessarily have to take notes unless you would like to. So I'm going to turn it over to Ted. If you want to come on screen, sir.
Thank you.
All right, welcome. And so again, on behalf of the Minority Business Assistance Center, we are pleased to have you with us today. Ted?
Great. Thank you very much. Before I share the screen and get started, I wanted to thank the Minority Assistance Centers, the Ohio Minority Assistance Centers, and Sharon and Rosita for putting the program together and allowing me to be here. Also want to let the participants know that, as Sharon said, you're going to get a copy of the presentation, so don't worry about notes. And also, if you have questions that don't get answered today, get a hold of me. You'll have my contact information. Call me, shoot me an email, whatever works for you. I'm going to get started, and Sharon will help me if I have a problem here. Let's see. I think we're good. Sharon or Rosita, let me know if I assume everybody is seeing the screen now. Is that correct?
We can see it, yes.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. So any of you who have taken classes before know that there are many different types of businesses, and franchising is just one of them. People have the option of starting a business completely on their own from scratch. They can buy an existing business, or they can consider a franchise, which is a new business, but it's a business that already has a track record because there are other locations already operating and systems that have been put together so that you really aren't on your own. You've got training and support from the franchise company. We like to talk about, it's really important for people to give serious thought to business ownership, not only themselves, but with their family, and then with trusted advisors before they make the leap. There's an investment of time, there's an investment of money, and I hate to be negative, but the reality is that most businesses fail. And the reason for that is because of poor planning, usually at the front end. And a lot of mistakes can be avoided with careful planning in the beginning before somebody makes an investment, a financial investment. You will have to invest some time and utilize local resources like the Ohio Minority Assistance Centers. There's also many free public resources such as the Small Business Administration, also SCORE, which can provide mentors. And these are all great resources for people to really think hard about business ownership, because I'd be the first to tell you that I personally think it's not for most people. Now, for some people, it's great, but it's not for everybody. Our focus at FranNet is helping individuals in Central Ohio figure out if franchise ownership is right for them, and if it is, to try to match them with a franchise that fits their budget, their interests, their goals, their skills, and then to guide them through the research process. And the reason I mentioned the research process, I think it's so critical. There are a lot of good franchises out there, and frankly, there's a lot that are not so good that should be avoided. But even when you find that really good franchise, that doesn't mean that it's necessarily a great fit or a great match for you. It may be great for Ted Fireman, and it may be a bad match for Sharon or anybody else. So there's a lot of research that has to be done to really figure out whether this is a good match for you and whether it's something that you are going to be successful and enjoy. Sharon already talked about me a little bit, so I'm not going to spend more time here. I will mention a couple of things. I've owned 3 franchises. I've also taught franchising and at Tulane University, and the rest isn't so important. I love this quote. It's an old one, but you can have everything you want if you help enough other people get exactly what they want. So again, why are people interested in entrepreneurship or business ownership? These are the things that we hear most commonly. And those of you that are thinking about business ownership, it's probably some combination. What I find most often is kind of 2 things. On the positive side, people want more control of their own schedule. They want to work hard, but they want to feel like they can work when they want to work. And if that means no evenings or no weekends or no travel, they're in control of their schedule. The other thing I believe, of course, everybody wants to make a good living. And I think as we go into times like we're in with uncertainty in the economy, maybe even a recession, layoffs, people are scared. I hear from people all the time, that's what keeps them up at night, is the idea that they're going to get laid off from their current job. And that does happen, particularly for older people like myself. That's what happened to me. It tends to be people that are 45, 50, 55 that are the ones that get laid off. And there's a lot of reasons for that. But I think that fear of layoffs, and when somebody owns their own business, they're not going to get laid off. Looking a little deeper, I think that some people are really frustrated with working for other people. Bottom line, I think a lot of us feel like we work really hard and we're making a lot of money for somebody else. And at some point in our lives, we like the idea of working for ourselves, being rewarded for our efforts, not depending on other people, not having to worry about office politics or bad bosses. There's many different reasons. I am going to, excuse me 1 second, I'm going to move this. So some of those things I talked about, if you ever have talked to a career coach or counselor or advisor, they sometimes refer to that as career pain. You're really frustrated with your boss. You don't like the fact that they control your schedule. They don't always appreciate you. They don't always respect your time. And so coaches call that career pain. And most of the time it comes down to people feeling like there's something better out there. They want to eliminate those pains, but they also want to feel that they're doing something for themselves and their family and their future. And like it says, there's something better out there. I want something better out of my career, something more meaningful. Maybe it's to create a legacy and pass the business on to my kids, or it's the opportunity at some point in the future to sell the business and make some money on the business. As far as I know, you can't sell a job, but if you build a business the right way, you can sell that business when the right time comes. A lot of times people don't think about what they're losing by staying in a job. We think about, hey, I like the paycheck and I'm nervous about starting a new business, but what does it really cost you in terms of how you feel about yourself or the time that you could have devoted to building that business? Businesses can be a little scary in the beginning because every business takes time to build. But once you've built that business, it becomes much more secure. And as I mentioned earlier, over time, as we get older, unfortunately, jobs become less secure because it's the older workers that tend to be the ones that get laid off. So it's funny, so many of us, I talk to people all the time who talk about someday, they dream or they talk all the time, someday they would like to own a business. Yet the reality is that most people work for somebody else. Now, maybe for a lot of people throughout their whole career. And I think there's a million reasons. These are some of them. The one that I want to talk a little bit again is this idea about risk. People automatically think that a business is riskier than having a job. And I would argue that. I would say that as you get older, the job becomes riskier. Maybe when you're 30, you feel very secure in the job. And if you lose your job, you know you can go out and get another one. It may be true in a good economy. But what we don't see in the statistics is that for people over 45, it gets much, much harder to find that job again. And the period of unemployment is longer. And maybe you have to take a pay cut, or maybe you have to move. And so if you've saved some money, you've spent that money during your period of unemployment. And the fact is, ExecuNet, which is a recruiting company, says that the new job that people get after 45, that new job after a layoff, only averages 18 to 22 months. So you may spend 6 months looking for that new job. Finally, you get that new job, and it lasts for 18 to 22 months. So if you look at it that way, and then that cycle repeats again and again, it's not a very good cycle of being unemployed, working for a short time, and then being unemployed again. With a business, it's that first year when you're nervous and you feel that it's risky because you're building up that business. And typically a business starts to really get to be successful in the second year. And by the third year, many times you've more than replaced your income. And now you've got a business that is going to continue to grow and scale. And it is also no more layoffs. You don't have to worry about that. And you're building equity that you don't build when you have a job. So if you could be able to manage some of that risk, and if you could find a job that, or I'm sorry, if you could find a business that was affordable and get the training and support, would you want to take a look? And most people say yes. And that's probably why you're here today. Talked about this already. The last thing I would say, though, I put on this, fear can be good. Sometimes when we feel that nervousness, that fear of making a change, I like to say it can be good because it tells us that we're looking at something that is worth looking at. I mean, we're not just going on and on with the same job because that's what we've always done, and that's the easy way. And if we start to look at a business, it should create a little bit of anxiety or fear. And I think it's good. It tells us that this is worth our time. We're not going to rush into anything, but we're looking at something that is worth looking at that could maybe make a big difference in our future. I think I emphasized all of this. Again, the last point, the longer you own a business, the more secure it is. When we talk to people, it sometimes surprises them that we not only talk about how do you get into business and how do you build that business over time, but also what is your exit strategy? What do you plan to do in 10 years? Do you plan to bring family members into the business? Or is your plan to build that business up to a point where you can choose to sell that business at the end of 5 years or 10 years and sell it profitably? And this can have an impact on the type of business that we want to look at in the beginning and how you build the business along the way. So it's really important to take a look. I'm not saying that everybody knows the answers exactly, but they need to be thinking about those things from the beginning and not wait 5 years down the road and then decide they want to sell it in 6 months. It sometimes takes time to get that business in the right position to maximize the sale and get the most from it. My own company, there's a couple things that we try to do. We really want to spend time with people before we start talking about any specific business. We really need to understand their goals, their interest, their budget, what they like, what they don't like. Maybe we want to find those things from their last job that they really enjoyed. We also want to find those things that they didn't like. We kind of put all that together, and we have a very good assessment tool that we call an entrepreneur profile. And we then present options that seem to be a potential fit for each client. And they begin to do research with our help. They begin to talk to the franchise companies. And the nice thing about this research process, if they're looking at a franchise, they can also talk to people that are already in that business. If you start from scratch, you can't really do that. If you buy an existing business, you can talk to that owner and you may get the truth, you may not. But if you're looking at franchises, if you wanted, you could talk to 5 or 10 or 20 owners that are already in that business and find out how they're doing and what their challenges are and what they would do differently. And they're willing to talk to you because they went through this themselves and they know what that experience is like. So I mentioned before that there's different kinds of ways to go into business. If you start from scratch, you're totally in control. You make all the decisions. No royalties, no franchise fees, etc. The disadvantages are that you have to create all those systems. With a franchise, those systems have been developed by the franchise company. They've been proven by franchise owners. They've been improved over the years. So you don't have to make the same mistakes that somebody else might make in the beginning. Startup businesses tend to be a little more difficult to get financing. For instance, if I go into a bank and ask for money because I want to start a company that, let's say, does window coverings, drapes, blinds, all the different window coverings. Well, all they can look at is me and my past and my experience, and the bank has to make a judgment from me and my business plan. Am I going to be successful? On the other hand, if I go in and I say, I want to buy a budget blinds franchise, just using that as an example, they have the chance to research and look at budget blinds and see that budget blinds has hundreds of locations, look at the financials behind them and see how many people have been successful. And therefore, they're a lot likely to make that loan because they've got a track record to look at. The other thing is the last bullet point here, starting from scratch is definitely the highest failure rate. Now, you might ask, why is that? I guess I would say that most of us can't be experts at everything. We're good at some things, but we can't be experts at everything. And when you start from scratch, you've got to be an expert at everything. With franchising, you've got the support from the franchise company and all those franchise owners that I talked about before become your advisors. You can pick up the phone and call a successful franchise owner anywhere and ask them about a problem you're facing, and they've probably been through it and they're happy to help you. Existing businesses, a lot of people like to buy a business that's already up, and maybe there is some cash flow and some employees, and potentially the company or business owner might help you with the financing. Disadvantages tend to be that it's really hard to find really good businesses that are for sale. The really good ones, from my experience, they sell privately and quietly because nobody wants to put a for sale sign out or hand it over to a broker, because that kind of announces to the world that the business is for sale, and the competitors will often sell against that and say, hey, look, that company is for sale. Maybe the employees are going to leave. Maybe it's not doing so good anymore. Who knows? But the really good businesses, that maybe it's a customer that knows about the business and wants to buy it, or it's a vendor that has worked with them for many years, they want to buy it, or maybe your attorney or your accountant help you find a family that wants to buy that business. It's really challenging to find a good business. And a lot of times the owners tend to be very emotionally attached, so they want the highest possible price. And maybe the business isn't worth that anymore. Maybe 2 years ago it was, and now it's declined a little bit, but the owners aren't always realistic about what the business is like. So it can be a little bit overpriced, and a lot of emotion involved in selling an existing business. Starting a new unit of a franchise, you have all the advantages that I talked about. You've got a franchise company that has built a reputation. They built good systems. They've got a track record. You've got the franchise providing training and support, and you've got franchise owners all over the country that are willing to help you. Let me go back a second. So you do pay an initial franchise fee. That is part of the startup cost that you, when you go to the bank, you have to include that. And you have what are called ongoing royalties, and that is a percentage of gross revenue that averages between 6 and 8%, depending on the franchise. You're paying that every month. And what you're paying for is the support and marketing support and coaching and all of those advantages of a franchise. You do pay for them. So what are you getting in return is all the support and training, and really reducing the risk, because you're not starting on your own. You're starting with a franchise that has a track record. Different types of franchises, single unit absentee owner. That means you hire a manager and you can keep your current job or business, but you have a professional manager running the business. Multi-unit is just what it sounds like, somebody that's in a financial position, maybe to open 3 locations or own 3 territories. Regional developer partners with the franchisor and develops an entire market like all of Central Ohio or all of Ohio. This is where it kind of gets interesting. 3,000 or more different franchises in the country. I would tell you there's some great ones out there. I would also tell you there's some that probably should be avoided. And part of my role is to help people focus on franchises that have a track record of success. So you don't waste your time looking at a franchise that's got a bunch of legal problems or franchise owners that aren't really making good money. And surprisingly, there are some franchises out there that could even be a pretty big name, franchises that you see when you're going to work every day. And they may be successful for the franchise company, but not necessarily very profitable for the individual franchise owner. And these are things that you need to know, either from somebody like myself or doing your own research. You can see the categories here. And one of the ways that you lower your risk and manage your risk is by looking at businesses that tend to do good in all types of economies. And not every business does well in all types of economies. If it's a business that tends to be more trendy, something brand new, it might not have proven itself to do well when the economy is uncertain or if we enter a recession. Example I want to give you, probably some people here can remember when it seemed like there was a frozen yogurt store in every strip center. Everywhere you turned, there was a frozen yogurt store. You can't even find them today. I don't even know where you would go to find one. And they seem to come back maybe every 15 or 20 years, and they open up everywhere, and then 5 years later, they're gone again. Sometimes another example of that would be there was a trend for muffin shops, and everybody was open muffin shops or cookie stores, and very popular for a year or 2, and then they're gone again. So we like to tell people to focus on things that do well in all economies: healthcare, education, pet care. There's a lot of businesses that do well in different economies. Here's some more of them. Sign manufacturing is a business-to-business printing and sign manufacturing. IT services that help companies find employees. Like right now, it's difficult to find employees, and individual companies are struggling to do that. A really good staffing business, they know how to find those people. Outsourced IT, maintenance of all kinds, because we're spending more time at home. A lot of people putting more money into their house. That could be new floor coverings, kitchen upgrade, bathroom upgrade, lawn care, all those kinds of things. And as I mentioned, health does extremely well. As you know, healthcare costs only go up, they never get cheaper. And with an aging population, healthcare is going to be important really for a long, long time. And at the bottom, pet care. More and more people of all ages, it's unbelievable. 70% of American households have a pet, and the spending on pets is up every year, year after year. Here's a few more. How much does it cost? Many times people think about, when they think of franchising, they think about McDonald's or Taco Bell or Wendy's, and somebody's probably told them that it costs $1.5 million or even $2 million to open a location, and that's true. It's also true that a McDonald's, a Wendy's, a Taco Bell, they're not looking for individuals anymore. They're looking for big investors that come to them with 10 million, 20 million, and can open a bunch of locations where the company wants them to. And obviously, a company like Wendy's doesn't need more locations. in Central Ohio. They're going to tell you that they want more locations in Wyoming or South Dakota or someplace like that. And the investors will open up wherever Wendy's wants them to open. People don't think about the franchises in the categories that I just talked about a moment ago. And those are the categories where there's great opportunities. You can see from this chart that if you look at the top three categories, under 50, 50 to 100, 100 to 250,000, that represents about half of all franchises. And then over 250,000 represents the other half. And that can be things like car washes, convenience stores, restaurants, fast food, that sort of thing. Now, this can be pretty scary when you see that the investment range, say, is 100 to 250,000. But in most cases, let me go back a second. In most cases, I've never had a client that's going to pay that kind of money out of their pocket. Most of us aren't walking around with $100,000 in our pocket. A typical franchise, somebody puts approximately 20% of the total in from their own funds, and the balance is financed through a bank or with the help of an SBA-backed loan, or sometimes Minority Assistance Center may also have access to financing, particularly for minorities who are very often underrepresented as business owners. So there are occasionally special programs, and many of the franchise companies will have a reduction in their franchise fees for minority-owned businesses. No correlation between the cost of a franchise and the profits it can earn. So there may be an after-school education program, for instance, that costs $50,000 to open, and that business with the right owner can easily be earning double the investment within a couple of years. So there is no correlation at all. And if I didn't finish my thought before, typical and personal investment is about 20% to 30% of the total cost. So if somebody is looking at $100,000 total, or sometimes you hear the term all-in investment of $100,000, they're going to probably put in somewhere between 20 and 30,000 of their own funds. When they say 50%, that would be unusual, but typically it's 20 to 30%, and there may be financing available for the balance. People will sometimes use some home equity, help from friends. There's a program that allows people to use some of their IRA or 401k funds without penalty if it's reinvested in a franchise. But I want to point out that it has to be used, it has to be set up by a professional who understands the rules of the Internal Revenue Service to do it properly so that you do not get any penalties. I see that there is something in the chat. If the folks hosting the call think that we should take a break, I'm glad to answer any questions.
Sure. Yeah, I just wanted to give folks an opportunity. This is great information that you are sharing for us, and some may already be familiar with this process, but if you're not, or if you have any questions about what you've heard so far, we want to give you a moment to pose that question. And if you want to, since it's not very many of us, if you wanted to actually just speak your question or comment, we can certainly give you privileges to use your mic. So just let us know. And at any point, if you want to ask your question, we'll be happy to entertain it. Okay.
Great. Thanks, Sharon.
Right.
And I will add that you'll see the contact information later in this presentation, and also when you receive your email. And if you have a question that you just, for some reason, don't want to ask right now, or you're not comfortable talking, that's fine. You can shoot me an email, or we can schedule a time to talk individually. Let me move forward. I think that all of these points are important. The biggest factor, I would say, is that you're not on your own. As I said earlier, if you start your own business, you're responsible for everything. And most of us just aren't experts at everything. All these things you see here are things that you need to do. You need to market. You're going to need to purchase your goods. You're going to need to train people. And it's just natural that people make mistakes. And if you start your own business and maybe you buy initially the wrong software and it doesn't work the right way for your business, you might have just spent thousands of dollars and you got to start over. So with a franchise, you eliminate mistakes, and it's almost like you're starting with you're kind of getting a running start, because the franchise company and the franchise owners that came before you have made mistakes and improved the system so that you don't have to make those mistakes. This is really what we look for. If somebody comes to me and is interested in a franchise, I mentioned before an after-school education program. We have a program that teaches children art education after school, because a lot of these programs have been cut out from the school systems. So we would be looking for company, and the company that we work with, is really a leader in this field, but we have to make sure that it's scalable. There's room for growth. It's a company that has a track record and has proven itself, so it's not a fad. For instance, the company I work with has been around for 25 years, and I would want to make sure that it's available in this market so that you can go to the schools and offer this program. And of course, it has to be a business that the prospect who's looking at franchises really is excited about and feels that they not only could make a good living, but would enjoy the work for many years, and they feel that they fit with the company. This is kind of back to the beginning when I talked about how you really have to give thought to the whole process. Part of that thought is, creating that model, almost a plan, not just the business plan, but kind of a personal plan for what you want to do in the next 5 or 10 years. And when I work with clients, I'm asking a lot of questions about what they really enjoy. Is there family behind them? What experiences have they had in the past that'll help them be successful? And we put that on paper. What do they really like? What do they not like? And can we find a business that fits before we actually begin the research process? This, I referred to the what we call entrepreneur profile. I don't want to spend a lot of time on that, but it's an assessment that allows people to really get some feedback about business ownership. It was developed by a Stanford University professor, and it produces a 10-page report. If anybody wants to take the assessment just to kind of get a sense of their business ownership aptitude, you're welcome to do that. Let me mention that please don't scan. This link is correct, but what do you call it that you would scan? I forget what they're called now. Is not correct. So don't scan it, and you'll see it later on when you get your copy. We probably should make a note of that, Sharon, when we send out the email that I'm blanking on what you call those, but it's the wrong one. So
the QR code.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll make a note of that. In our process, If somebody begins to work with me or somebody else with my company, they first talk with me, they go through that assessment process, a lot of questions. We kind of develop that model that's their likes, their dislikes. And then they have a chance to talk to the franchise companies directly. After that, they have a chance to read the franchise disclosure document, which is a ton of information, the history of the company, all of the really almost everything they need to know about the company itself. They then have a chance to talk to as many franchise owners as they would like. They can talk to successful ones. They can talk to some that maybe are less successful, that are struggling. They can even talk to some, if there are any, that have left the business. They might find that they left just for personal reasons. Maybe they had to go take care of a parent and had to get out of the business in a hurry. Maybe they didn't follow the system. Whatever the reasons are, you can talk to anybody that you want to. It really gives you the chance to understand the business and the role of a good owner, which is hard to find. If you're looking at starting a new business on your own, you can't do that. But if you're buying an existing business, you can talk to that one owner. In this case, you can talk to as many franchise owners as you like. It really helps you to get a lot of information about what those people are doing to be successful. This is just more information about talking to the franchise owners. And part of my role is providing questions that are going to help people get the answers they need to really make smart decisions about business ownership. I want to give you an example. One question that I encourage people to ask a franchise company is how many of their franchise owners have come back maybe 1 or 2 years later and bought more territory or another location? Because that really tells you something about that franchise. If they're being successful and they're getting support and they're getting training and they're getting good marketing and they're making money, they'll come back to the franchise company and say, hey, I'm meeting my goals and I'd like to open another location or have a bigger territory. Well, that's a great sign. And that tells you it might be a franchise that's worth taking a good hard look at. Final step in that process is some people will go and visit a couple of those franchises that I talked about a minute ago, and they'll actually go visit headquarters to meet the people at the franchise who are going to be the people that they're going to deal with a lot over the coming years. So I think it's great to go to headquarters, meet them, see them, make sure that you feel like it's a fit with that company culture before you make a decision. And a final part of that process is meeting with a good franchise attorney who has experience in franchising. Everybody knows an attorney, and some of them specialize in real estate, and some of them specialize in business, some of them in maybe writing a will. But there's an area of specialization in franchising, and that's the attorney that you need, and that's who I refer people to, so they get an experienced opinion from somebody who really understands franchising. I also, if needed, can help people meet an accountant, a rollover specialist. That's back to that retirement or 401k money that I talked about. There are lenders and specialists who can help you set that up. And there's other local people that sometimes you need in this process. Might be somebody to help you write a business plan. It might be a score coach. You're going to want to be in touch with Sharon or Rosita at the Minority Assistance Center to make sure that you're getting coaching and advice from them. A lot of local resources.
Ted, we do have a quick question.
Oh, sure.
Is it possible to maybe discuss some of the reasons that a franchise may not be as successful or that might fail?
Yeah, absolutely. There's two different levels. On the one hand, sometimes a franchise owner fails, and usually in that case, it's because they haven't followed the system, and they've kind of decided on their own that maybe they've got a better idea, and they don't follow the system, or they don't do the marketing that the franchisor has suggested, and they kind of bring the failure on themselves. When you talk about the franchise companies, there's so many out there that there could be a lot of different reasons, but one of them is that many times a franchise company gets into franchising because they want to grow fast. Maybe they've been very successful in their local market and they've run a really good business, and then they decide that they want a franchise so they can grow that business. Well, there's a huge difference between running that local business, even if it's very successful, and running a franchise, because the franchisor or franchise company has to be able to do training, and they have to be able to support franchise owners, and they have to provide marketing, and they have to do all those things to make sure that the franchise owners all over the country are successful. And sometimes they get into franchising thinking that it's an easy way to grow quickly, and they're good at their core business, but they're not necessarily good at being a franchisor. And I would say that that's where the research comes in. And that FDD, or franchise disclosure document, which I kind of went quickly over, didn't go into any detail, that has a lot of information that will help somebody to figure out whether this really is a good franchise, whether they're financially strong, whether they've got good leadership. And that's also something that my company does. And if you'll excuse me 1 second, my partner, my little pup here, always wants to be on my lap. So I hope that's okay. But that's some of the main reasons that I would say a franchisor fails, is that they just aren't necessarily ready to be a franchisor. They're just looking for quick growth. And part of the reason you would talk to me or somebody like me is to find franchise companies that are successful, and you still have to figure out whether it's a good match for you, because it might be a good company, but not a good fit for you. But my company vets these franchises. I don't work with 3,000 companies. I work with about 250, and my headquarters has vetted them for financial strength, for leadership, for good management, for good marketing, training, support. And we talk to some of the franchise owners to hear from them, make sure that they're satisfied and happy and achieving their goals. So I hope that's enough on that subject. If not, glad to talk further. No shortcut for doing the research. And that's where people get in trouble with a franchise, is they get emotional, they get excited, and they make a decision without doing enough research. And you can't take all the emotion out, because we should be excited about the business, but getting excited about the business is one thing. Doing your homework and taking the time to get the facts and the data, and to really talk to enough current franchise owners to make sure that you're really understanding the business, the role of the owner, and the earning potential before you make an investment. I think that's really the key. This is kind of an interesting slide. Don't get ambushed. As you begin to research, everybody you know thinks that they're an expert. Your friends, your family members, maybe your accountant or your attorney, everybody wants to give advice. And the reality is that most people really don't know much about franchising. And I'm not saying that you can't listen to your friends or your personal advisors, but keep in mind that most of them probably don't know anything about franchising. So you really have to become an expert, and you may need to find new experts to talk to, and that might be an attorney who really knows franchising, or a accountant who understands business startups and the risk involved. Our friends and family members, we love them, but just keep in mind that they're not experts. And sometimes they put their own feelings. They may be worried that you're going to make a mistake, so they might tell you some story that they heard of somebody else that failed. And of course, there's people that failed. And I think that a lot of it is because they didn't do their research in advance. So I just tell people, become your own expert and take advice from other people kind of with a grain of salt. Everybody loves to give advice. I don't know that we're going to have time to really talk about some of my successful owners. I think I want to just pick one to mention. She's in the middle of the screen. Her name was Sally, and she spent almost 30 years with Nationwide Insurance. And she had been there long enough to take early retirement. And she said, you know what? I'm in my mid-50s, but I'm not old. I expect to probably work for another 15 years till I'm 70. And she had done desk work, I think mostly related to data analysis at Nationwide for many years. And she said, I don't want to go to another meeting. I don't want to be sitting at a desk. I don't want to do a job that I don't feel really is important in terms of helping other people. And she ended up with this business, Seniors Helping Seniors, which is a franchise that provides support and assistance to older adults at home to allow them to stay at home and not have to go to an assisted living or independent living or nursing home or any of that. Their unique niche is that they hire older adults to provide that direct care instead of hiring 20-year-olds like most companies do. And the reasoning is, if they hire young, I'll say youngish, older people who maybe have retired themselves, but still want to work 10 hours or 20 hours a week, those 55 or 60-year-old care providers are going to be able to relate much better to those older adults, maybe 75 or 80 or 85 years old, who need the support. They're going to relate better, and they're also going to be more reliable. A 20-year-old is going to really have a tough time talking to an 85-year-old. And that 20-year-old is more likely to leave the job if somebody else offers them 50 cents an hour more. Whereas that older worker who still wants to get out and do something and not be fully retired, the money is still important, but it's not as critical. So they're not the type that's going to jump around. They're doing this job because they want to do something meaningful. And they found that these older service providers are sticking with the job for years instead of for months like the younger ones. So they've kind of got their unique perspective, Seniors Helping Seniors. And for Sally, it was just a huge change. It happens to be a faith-based organization, and she's a very faith-based person herself. So it really turned out to be a great match. And after a lot of research, she left Nationwide, took early retirement, and is now really enjoying her work. And I'm glad to tell you about the other ones, but I probably should stop as we're approaching noon, and maybe there's another question or two, or any feedback anybody wants to share. Or Sharon, if there's anything that you want to mention about upcoming programs or other services you all provide, that's fine too.
Absolutely.
And thank you again, everybody, for taking time to join us, and to the Ohio Minority Assistance Center for letting me participate.
Thank you so much, Ted. This was phenomenal. Thank you. The information that you shared. Um, those that are here in the audience, do you have any questions? Pamela, I see you there. And Bonton, I don't know if I'm saying that right, but these are some of our clients that have been with us for some time. And the fact that you're even considering this, I'm glad that you took the time to be a part of this session. But if you have any questions for Ted or even us, we'd be happy to entertain it. Okay. All right. But yeah, this was helpful for me. And I really loved the idea about the seniors helping seniors, Ted. I've got people clients that come to us, that are looking to really provide not only, income for themselves and their families, but to be able to really do something that is going to be impactful in the community, and certainly serving our seniors is great. And you're right, folks are having a lot of challenges getting good, reliable employees for some of these businesses. And so that definitely has to be taken into consideration, when someone is going to, venture out and invest in a franchise. Um, am I going to be able to get the help that I need to run it? Because obviously we can't do it by ourselves, right?
That's right. And Sharon, the one thing I would add as we close, I think, for you and for the participants, I mentioned that most people, if I stopped 100 people and said, what do you think of when you hear the word franchise? They would say McDonald's, French fries.
Mm-hmm.
We stay away from fast food for the reasons I mentioned. The cost involved is astronomical, but there are franchises almost in every area of business. And I still get some people that say, but why would I pay that upfront fee? And why would I pay those monthly royalties? And I think it's all about the training, the support, and the ongoing support. It's not just train you and then goodbye. If you're with this franchise for 5 years or 10 years, there's going to be weekly calls. There's going to be visits to your location. There's also a whole network of other franchise owners willing to help when you encounter a problem. And so it's really about success. You're going to invest a little bit more in front in the beginning in order to get access to that brand name and that training and support, and really to reduce the risk that's involved in any business, and I think increase the success. It's just logical that if somebody really does their homework carefully to make sure it's a good match, and then they end up with joining a company that's going to train them and support them, it's just natural that they would be more successful. It's not magic. It's just makes sense. So it's not for everybody, but I think for some people, it really can be the difference between struggling and having a successful business that they build and can earn a nice income and then sell much later. And that's the last point, is when you go to sell the franchise, it's going to sell for a higher multiple of earnings, because you can point to the franchisor and say, look, here's part of the reason I was successful. I had all this support and all this training. Whereas if you buy, Joe's senior services, all you got is Joe, and Joe's going to retire, and he really doesn't want to help you after he retires. So people will pay a little bit more for that franchise at the end of the day. So that's my 2 cents.
Well, I appreciate that. Thank you. The insight is invaluable, and your contact information, we wanted to make sure that everybody has that. If you could, I don't know if your screen is still available. Otherwise, we can put your information in the chat if you just want to type it in there, but we definitely want to make sure that folks can reach out to you
Let me
if they're considering this.
Quickly find it again. Oh, you know what? It doesn't really, that didn't really have my, So I don't want to keep everybody here, but if we could, should I type it in or?
Yes, or you can even speak it to us for the purposes of the video. You can just go ahead and then tell us how to reach you.
Sure, it's T Fireman. The email is T Fireman. That's TFIREMAN at FranNet. That's FRANNET.com. T Fireman at FranNet.com. I'm on LinkedIn if anybody wants to connect. I'm the only Ted Fireman on LinkedIn. Those are the easiest ways, and hopefully we can put that in the email that will go out as well.
Yes, absolutely, we will. Great, great, great. Thank you again, Ted. And also for those who are listening, we do have a couple of sessions that are next week that we are excited about. They are Grow with Google e-commerce marketing series. It will be starting on next Tuesday, the 24th. It's actually 3 consecutive days. So the 24th of January, the 25th of January, and the 26th. The topics that will be covered is launching your business with customer-focused marketing, part 1 and part 2, and then selling online with e-commerce tools. So we'll be hearing directly from the experts from Google how you can utilize these tools to grow your business. So we encourage those who have not registered to do so by visiting our website at www.cul.org/MBAC. You'll see our training calendar. And also, if you're getting our weekly newsletter, the links are there in the newsletter as well. So again, on behalf of our director, Jesse Mark, and our entire Minority Business Assistance Center staff, we thank you for taking time out of your schedule to be with us today. Thank you again to our presenter, Ted Fireman of FranNet, and Rosita, as always, for having our back. Be well. Have a good day.
Bye-bye.